Harrison freaking Ford. He's one of the most well-respected actors in the business, his career in movies going all the way back to the 1960s, his two iconic roles, Han Solo and Indiana Jones, beloved the world over. His films have grossed more than $5.4 billion in North America and close to $10 billion worldwide. His credits throughout the decades range from dramatic roles to comedic roles to action roles. He's often the leading man, the good guy, but he has played villains too. He received the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award in 2000, the Cecil B. DeMille Award at the Golden Globes in 2002, and an honorary Palme d'Or at this year's Cannes Film Festival. 8 of his films have been nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, including Raiders of the Lost Ark, Working Girl, and The Fugitive. He's presented trophies at Oscar ceremonies time and time again, like he did just this year, awarding Best Picture to Everything Everywhere All at Once, reuniting on stage with his Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom co-star Ke Huy Quan. And did you know Harrison Ford is an Oscar nominee himself? That's right, he does have one Academy Award nod for acting on his resume. But for someone as famous as Harrison Ford is, someone who's played so many amazing roles and has appeared in at least a dozen stunning landmark movies, why has Ford, who turns 81 years old this summer, never had much of a chance at the gold trophy? What are the reasons why his work is almost never taken seriously by the Academy? In this video, we're talking the extraordinary career of the one and only Harrison Ford and why he still has never won that elusive Oscar. First, as always, let's go back to the beginning. Harrison Ford was born in Chicago, Illinois on July 13, 1942, to Mother Dorothy and Father John. Growing up, Ford was a Boy Scout, and he worked at his high school's radio station. During his senior year at Ripon College in Wisconsin, he took a drama class and got the acting bug, and he went to Los Angeles, where he signed a $150 per week contract with Columbia Pictures, playing bit roles in films. He showed up in things here and there, but no breakthrough for Ford came in the 1960s or the early 1970s, so he became a professional carpenter for a while. His first small role in a significant film finally arrived in 1973 when he appeared in American Graffiti, directed by George Lucas.
Hey, you're supposed to be the fastest thing in the valley, man, but that can't be your car. It must be your mama's car.
His part only amounts to a few minutes, but his time on American Graffiti with Lucas would of course lead to Star Wars 4 years later. The famous story is that Lucas hired Ford not to actually be in his epic space opera, but to read lines for actors auditioning for roles. But throughout the casting process, Lucas was so impressed by Ford's readings that he eventually cast him as Han Solo, the charismatic no-nonsense smuggler who effectively steals the movie.
17. Okay, you guys got yourselves a ship.
American Graffiti had been a successful movie with critics, at the box office, and at the Academy Awards, earning 5 nominations including Best Picture, and Ford is in 1974's The Conversation too, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, that film also getting a Best Picture nod, but his screen time in both movies was so minuscule that he was never going to register much with audiences. Star Wars, which became the highest grossing film up to that point, and which also earned an Oscar nomination for Best Picture, as well as nods in 10 other categories, was a completely different story because Ford landed a great role with tons of screen time in Lucas's 1977 landmark piece of pop filmmaking. Ford is so funny and charming and real as Han Solo, and his is the performance I always gravitate to the most every time I watch A New Hope. Now, having said that, it was a performance that was never really going to factor into the Oscars, although a Golden Globe nomination for Ford was a possibility, I guess. Alec Guinness got into the Best Supporting Actor category at that year's Academy Awards, but I feel like part of that had to do with the gravitas of the actor himself, Guinness having already won an Oscar in the 1950s for The Bridge on the River Kwai. Star Wars totally catapulted Ford's star status, although his ensuing roles in the late 70s didn't do much for his career, like, say, The Frisco Kid, opposite Gene Wilder. He did make a small appearance in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, another film that got a Best Picture Oscar nomination, but it wasn't until the 1980s that Ford became a full-fledged movie star and appeared in one extraordinary film after another almost every year the entire decade. Up first was 1980's The Empire Strikes Back, the incredible follow-up to Star Wars that for many, including myself, is the best installment in the long-running franchise, and Ford is simply wonderful here, especially in his many flirtatious scenes with Carrie Fisher. The film didn't do as well as its predecessor at the Oscars, only getting into technical categories and winning a Special Achievement Award for visual effects, but The Empire Strikes Back has an amazing legacy regardless, Ford given so many iconic moments, especially his last. Even more significant around this time in Ford's career was snagging the role of Indiana Jones in Steven Spielberg's runaway hit Raiders of the Lost Ark, released in the summer of 1981.
Please, I don't need a nurse. I just want to sleep.
He's such a baby.
Marion, leave me.
How's this here?
Go away. Yes. Hurts.
Signing on to the project when a deal with Tom Selleck couldn't be reached, Ford turned out to be the perfect casting choice for the famed archaeologist and adventurer. This is one of the great blockbuster movies ever. The action is inventive, the comedy timeless, the music by John Williams phenomenal, the film's sublime entertainment for the entire family. And Raiders of the Lost Ark became such a colossal smash that it stayed in theaters for months and months, the highest grossing film of its year with more than $200 million. Now, a film this popular was going to land somewhere at the Academy Awards, obviously, but I don't think even the top talent involved could have expected all that followed. A whopping 9 nominations, not only in technical categories, but also in Best Director for Spielberg and Best Picture. Did Ford have a shot at getting into the Best Actor category for playing Indiana Jones? I'd say it wasn't entirely off the table given the immense love from critics, audiences, and Academy members, but that specific nod was always going to be an uphill battle for a film in this genre. I recently chatted with Cody Derricks from Next Best Picture about how the Indiana Jones films did at the Oscars. The hour-long chat available exclusively on the Patreon if you're interested. Here's what Cody said about Ford's chances at a Best Actor Oscar nomination.
We can consider Harrison Ford in Best Actor. This lineup is again, pretty solid. I haven't seen Paul Newman in Absence of Malice, but I love Paul Newman. But the other 4 are all really good performances.
Yeah.
Not too over the moon about Warren Beatty as an actor in general. So if he was not here for Reds, I wouldn't be too sad, especially because he wins director anyway. But yeah, I mean, the Harrison Ford performance is something that they were never going to go for, but I would not be too sad if he was in.
That would have been a very cool nomination in the history of the awards. Would have been like
right,
Best
like
Actor for Raiders of. It would have been like a Aliens nomination. I don't think people would be like, what? Because he really is.
Be sad.
He's one of the top reasons why it's so successful. He's just so great. Ultimately, despite Ford missing here, that's 5 Best Picture Oscar nominees for the actor in less than a decade. Not bad at all, I'd say. Up next was Blade Runner, the atmospheric science fiction drama directed by the visionary Ridley Scott. Ford plays the lead role of Deckard, who pursues replicants who stole a ship in space.
He say you're under arrest, Mr. Deckard.
Got the wrong guy, pal.
This film has a fantastic reputation today, but back in 1982, the movie flopped, making just $32 million on a $28 million budget. In the same summer that audiences rejected John Carpenter's The Thing, another flop that later became a classic, and embraced Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and Spielberg's mega blockbuster E.T., the marketplace was oversaturated with science fiction films. Blade Runner only got 2 Oscar nominations, Best Art Direction and Best Special Effects, and basically, it was time the film needed to have an impact on audiences. Ford continued climbing the ranks of the world's biggest box office star of the next 2 years, first with Return of the Jedi in 1983, which closed out the original Star Wars trilogy and received multiple Oscar nominations in technical categories and won a Special Achievement Award for visual effects. And then in 1984, Ford reunited with Steven Spielberg for the second Indiana Jones adventure, Temple of Doom, my personal favorite in the franchise. This film made big bucks at the box office, but the reviews weren't very kind, many considering the summer blockbuster a step down from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that so-so response from critics had an effect during the 1985 award season when Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom only received 2 Oscar nominations and 1 for visual effects. Harrison Ford couldn't keep hopping back and forth between Star Wars and Indiana Jones forever, and thus in 1985, his career took a big leap forward into smaller, more personal projects from auteur directors. That first auteur director was Peter Weir, and the film was Witness, about a detective who goes undercover in Amish country to protect a boy who witnessed a murder.
What are you gonna do, Paul? You gonna kill me? You gonna shoot me? You gonna shoot him? Sandra! You gonna shoot him? Is that what you're gonna do, Paul? Him? The woman? Me?
After spending years in summer blockbusters, Witness was a welcome change of pace for Ford. His dramatic power on full display in a role that felt tailor-made to his talents. He gets to be funny, serious, and romantic in a story that is always gripping every step of the way. Witness opened at the beginning of 1985 in February, but the reviews were through the roof, with many commending Ford's performance, and the film stayed strong all the way into the following year's award season. Witness received 6 Golden Globe nominations, including Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama for Ford, and it was nominated at DGA and won at WGA. Ford got a BAFTA Award nomination for Best Actor too, his only BAFTA nod to date, by the way, and suddenly Oscar took notice of a great Harrison Ford performance. The film earned a whopping 8 Academy Award nominations total, including Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, Best Picture, and yes, Best Actor for Ford. In his category were James Garner for Murphy's Romance, William Hurt for Kiss of the Spider-Woman, Jack Nicholson for Prizzi's Honor, and Jon Voight for Runaway Train. A pretty stacked category, I must say. Everything on paper makes it look like Ford might have had a chance to win, given the Academy's enthusiasm for Witness, but I think what hurt him overall was his understated approach to the character. It's not nearly as showy as Nicholson in Prizzi's Honor, or Voight in Runaway Train, or especially Hurt as a gay man in Kiss of the Spider-Woman. Voight won the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Drama. However, it was Hurt who had the edge of the Oscars, I'd say, because of the flashier performance he gives in the film. Also, Kiss of the Spider-Woman got into Best Picture, like Witness, and Hurt won the BAFTA Award for Best Actor. Hurt's career had been exploding throughout the early 1980s in films like Altered States, Body Heat, and The Big Chill, and Kiss of the Spider-Woman was a role that allowed him to greatly flex his dramatic muscles. I'm not sure Harrison Ford was hurt by his Oscar loss in early 1986, since, if you watch the Best Actor clip on YouTube, you'll see he's not even there. Everyone else in the category is. He didn't intentionally skip the ceremony, he probably would have been there, but both Ford and his Witness director Peter Weir were shooting the Mosquito Coast in Belize the week of the Oscars, and so they missed it. Given this is Ford's only Oscar nomination to date, it's unfortunate he didn't get to participate in that year's telecast. But I mean, I guess I'm happy he has that one nomination. It's kind of a cool piece of trivia. I don't think many people know about that nomination. Like it's kind of
I'm also glad that he can be considered an Academy Award nominee, but I'm not broken up about the fact that he never won or even got nominated after that. And I'm sure he's not either.
Has a trailer ever said Academy Award nominee Harrison Ford? I don't think there ever has been.
I mean, there's not the kinds of movies that he makes and would continue to make after that nomination were not necessarily the kinds of movies that would need that sticker to get audiences in the theater.
Yeah, he's done some like regarding Henry. He did some like kind of serious dramas throughout the years. But The Mosquito Coast in late 1986 did make the positive impression Witness did on critics or audiences, bombing at the box office and being overlooked at the following year's Oscars, although Ford did receive a second consecutive Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama. 1988's Frantic, directed by Roman Polanski, did okay, but Ford's better received film that year was the smash hit Working Girl, which put Ford in a genre he'd almost completely avoided up until that point, a comedy.
Can Big Jack come out to play?
Little Jack really has to get going.
Little Katie's been so lonely.
No.
But this was no mid-list comedy. It's a magnificent piece of entertainment with a stellar cast, including Melanie Griffith, Joan Cusack, and Sigourney Weaver, who all received Oscar nominations for their divine performances, and the film also got into Best Director for Mike Nichols and Best Picture. I feel like Ford might have been in the conversation for a Best Supporting Actor nomination, but he needed one precursor nod or a Critics' Prize along the way to give him a boost. Ford closed out his busy, monumental decade by appearing in the third and what many presumed at the time to be the final Indiana Jones installment, The Last Crusade, which brought the great Sean Connery on board as Indy's father. Steven Spielberg's effort this time was in reigniting the magic of Raiders of the Lost Ark and moving away from the darkness of Temple of Doom, and critics, although seemingly a little tired of the franchise by that point, were kinder to the third installment than they were the second, and the film received 3 Oscar nominations, winning for Best Sound Effects Editing. Harrison Ford didn't start the 90s in the best way, presumed innocent regarding Henry only doing so-so with critics and audiences. He got his magic back with 1992's Patriot Games, where he took over the Jack Ryan role Alec Baldwin had played in The Hunt for Red October, and he carried the franchise into Clear and Present Danger. In between the 2 Jack Ryan films, Ford came the closest, I would argue, to a second Oscar nomination in his long career for his spectacular performance in The Fugitive, based on the classic TV series about a doctor who's unjustly accused of murdering his wife, and goes in search of the real killer while being the target of a nationwide manhunt.
You find this man. You find this man.
How tall is he? How
tall is he? Everything from me. Oh, Jesus.
Now this really could have been a run-of-the-mill summer thriller quickly forgotten by the fall, but The Fugitive proved to be above-average entertainment, made with tremendous style and filmmaking craft, and featuring excellent performances by Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. Reviews were absolutely stellar, and by early 1994, it looked like it could be a major contender at the Oscars. It got 3 Golden Globe nominations, including Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture Drama for Harrison Ford. It also got in at WGA, DGA, and PGA, and at BAFTA, the film received 4 nominations. Was Harrison Ford about to get his second Oscar nomination for Best Actor? The Fugitive did very well at the 66th Academy Awards, with 7 nods total, including Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and Best Picture. Tommy Lee Jones was nominated for and won Best Supporting Actor, but sadly, Ford missed the final 5 in the Best Actor category.
Above all, I think a man who needs no support at all, Harrison Ford. For all of you, thanks for the work.
I bet he came very close given that picture nod. He was probably in 6th or 7th place, but the thing about Ford is that he's so often taken for granted, not given enough respect for his acting talent, and so a snub happened yet again.
I'm an Academy Award.
No, I heard the intro. I read the intro.
Throughout the rest of the 1990s, he maintained his status as a giant movie star, headlining films like The Devil's Own opposite Brad Pitt, and the romance remake Sabrina, which earned Ford to date his last Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor, this time in the comedy or musical category. My personal favorite Harrison Ford movie of the second half of the 90s is Air Force One, where he plays the president.
Get off my plane.
Gary Oldman as the villain, Glenn Close as the vice president, tons of kinetic action on board a plane. Hell yes! This one was never going to win any Oscars, but it is a goofy, sublime blast. At the turn of the century, Ford received some major awards, starting with the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award in 2000. I especially love what Carrie Fisher had to say to him.
Whenever I start to talk, Harrison gets nervous. And you really should stop getting so nervous because it turns out I have a terrible memory. Which should relax a lot of people in this room.
And then in 2002, he got the Cecil B. DeMille Award at the Golden Globes.
My luck is holding. I'm nominated in a category where the competition is dead.
Ford's film career around this time started to fade, although not before he played a pitch-perfect villain in the underrated 2000 thriller What Lies Beneath, co-starring Michelle Pfeiffer and directed by Robert Zemeckis.
I almost froze to death, laying here, wet, naked, pretending to be electrocuted. Hey, Coop. How you doing?
Ford is almost always the hero, and so it was a neat change of pace to see him play a menacing psychopath in those final few scenes. For the next 7 years, Ford popped up in forgettable bombs like K-19 The Widowmaker and Hollywood Homicide, and it wasn't until he put on that fedora hat again for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that he got a sizable audience back into theaters. Sadly, this 4th film in the franchise from director Steven Spielberg was not a return to form, making lots of money, but not really connecting with fans of the original trilogy. After Crystal Skull, Ford leaned into a new era as a character actor, taking on more supporting roles and trying new things. I love his performance in 2010's Morning Glory, opposite Diane Keaton and Rachel McAdams. His mix of comedy and drama fantastic.
Suppose I don't have standards?
Sure you do. When you got your pep smear on air, you wore a silk robe.
Okay!
Classy touch.
And for me, 2 of his best performances in film came a few years later. His role of Branch Rickey in 42, starring Chadwick Boseman as Jackie Robinson, should have earned Ford more Oscar consideration for Best Supporting Actor.
It means someday you're going to meet God, and when he inquires as why you didn't take the field against Robinson in Philadelphia, and you answer that it's because he was a Negro, it may not be a sufficient reply.
It's a wonderfully inspired turn far outside his wheelhouse, and Ford is at his most sensitive and emotionally moving in 2015's The Age of Adeline, where his character reconnects with a woman he loved decades ago who has never aged a day.
I thought I was losing my mind. How is this possible?
The film was too under the radar to get Ford any Oscar buzz, but I love him in this. Next up came Ford revisiting more of his classic characters, like Han Solo in Star Wars The Force Awakens. There's a lot to like about that installment, and Ford is for sure one of the highlights. He also gave a welcome return as Deckard in Blade Runner 2049 from director Denis Villeneuve. Ford doesn't have a whole lot to do in that one, but it's great to see him regardless. Most recently, Ford has been busy on television, appearing in both 1923, a spin-off of Yellowstone, and Shrinking, a comedy series on Apple TV+. He's never in his entire career received an Emmy Award nomination. Might this year bring him his first? We'll find out soon. And lastly, Ford has given us his final performance as Indiana Jones in the James Mangold-directed Dial of Destiny. He was clearly very touched by all the love he received at the film's premiere at the Cannes Film Festival this May. His affection for the character so apparent throughout the years. He got an honorary Palme d'Or at the festival too, which was fantastic to see. Reviews for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny have been mixed so far, and there's no chance Ford receives any Oscar consideration for his final outing as the character, but I for one think it'll be a thrill to see him play the role one last time. At the end of the day, to be honest, I don't think Harrison Ford cares about the Oscars. I would bet in his long career, he never once took on a role thinking, hey, maybe this will get me an Academy Award nomination. I don't think that's ever happened. Whether it's a leading role or a supporting one, the hero or the villain, he picks roles that interest him, that have top-of-the-line filmmakers and great actors for him to work with. Ford doesn't need an Oscar. He's an icon in the industry who's loved and respected by everyone, and I would say his chances at winning a competitive Academy Award by this point are close to nil.
Not all actors need an Oscar. You know, there's plenty of actors who can go through their career and have a wonderful career, maybe have a moment where they come close to some sort of recognition with awards, but it's not necessary for everybody.
But I've always thought Ford to be so much more than a movie star. His performances in Witness, The Fugitive, 42, and The Age of Adeline have shown the depth of his dramatic talent, and his incredible charisma on display as both Han Solo and Indiana Jones is the kind most actors in the world can only dream of. From American Graffiti to Dial of Destiny, yep, 50 frickin' years of amazing work in the movies, Harrison Ford is simply one of a kind, and I do think an honorary Oscar should be in the cards for him. And who knows, maybe there is a wonderful role coming down the pike that could earn him a second competitive nod at the Academy Awards, in lead actor or supporting actor, I don't care which. How glorious would it be to watch the legendary Harrison Ford not just hand off a gold trophy in the Dolby Theater like he did this year, but at some point collect one for himself and receive a rousing standing ovation from his peers. I would say, quite glorious indeed. Thanks so much for watching! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my recent videos about Winona Ryder and Michelle Pfeiffer for more elusive Oscar content, and let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Harrison Ford performance? Do you think he should have more than just one Oscar nomination? We'll see you next time.